So first we have Grace Sun from Rawlinson Community School, and Grace is here in person. Welcome, Grace.
Thank you for this opportunity. Hello all, my name is Grace, and I'm a parent of children who attend a TDSB school. And I'm quite an ordinary parent in that I just really love my kids and try my best to model and instill values and morals that make the world a better place. That being said, I'm here to advocate for Nakba Day to be added to the TDSB list of days of significance to ensure that my children are taught to affirm and recognize the identity of their Palestinian peers at school. I do not want my children to learn that it is acceptable for their school to be silent about and ignore the 1948 Nakba. This silence denies the experience of Palestinians and their existence. The denial of the experience and existence of Palestinians is anti-Palestinian racism. Before October 7th, I admittedly was completely ignorant of Palestine. I did not know of its existence, only that there were people called Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip where there was ongoing violence. It never occurred to me to ask, who are Palestinians and what happened to Palestine? This was all taking place far away and didn't involve me. After October 7th, because of the resiliency of Palestinians in Gaza under occupation and strewn across the diaspora, through social media, I was delivered first-person accounts of their plight. Decades of occupation, now culminating in a genocide that is happening now as I speak. Suddenly, the distance I felt from Gaza collapsed, and it hit home for me. I felt very protective of my family. Since then, with my worldview broken wide open, I continue to receive education from scholars, journalists, and spiritual leaders who affirm and recognize the experience of Palestinians in Gaza under occupation and of the diaspora. And as I am learning, I am teaching my children about Palestine. I started by telling them about Nakba Day, the Day of Remembrance. At that time, it was coming up on May 15th. We read books and watched videos about the 1948 Nakba. We wrote an email to each child's teacher and asked if they could recognize Nakba Day on May 15th in the classroom. But come May 15th, we told the kids that there was no response from their teacher, and therefore there would be no opportunity to learn about it at school. What my kids learned is the affirmation of Palestinians is not acceptable at their school, that their school does not see the experience of Palestinians as significant. This is anti-Palestinian racism. Our family makes great efforts to resist anti-Palestinian racism by connecting with Palestinian families, participating and contributing to Palestine solidarity events, and supporting anti-genocide activities in the community. We would like to see the TDSB make efforts to affirm the identity of Palestinian students and address anti-Palestinian racism. Our family asks that TDSB reconcile the harm of anti-Palestinian racism through 3 actions. 1, adding Nakba Day to the list of days of significance. 2, to overcome the barriers for implementing the rooted curriculum, which I learned about as it was referenced by a delegate at a previous meeting. And 3, ensure that the combating hate and racism strategy is passed without delay. There is a sense of urgency. There is a genocide happening. I will end here with a reference to Sankofa. It's a concept originating from the Akan tribe. Sankofa is the concept that it's not taboo to go back for what you forgot or left behind. What I get from this concept and what I offer to the TDSB with this concept is that the denial and erasure of Palestinian existence can come to an end with the retrieval and inclusion of Palestinian history, culture, and experiences at the TDSB. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. I'm not seeing any speakers on the list today, but we do appreciate you coming and sharing your perspective. Up next, we have delegate number 7, Jeff Carolin, TDSB parent, Dover Court. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. Good evening, trustees and staff. I appear before you wearing multiple hats: lawyer, mediator, father of 2 children in the TDSB, and as a Jewish person. And it is through this last lens that I would like to address you this evening regarding the agenda item about the Days of Significance calendar. And it feels particularly meaningful to address an institution of learning today on the Jewish holiday of Shavuot that begins at sundown, a holiday in which one of the practices is all-night study. The particular issue that I would like to speak to today, similar to the previous delegate, is what I believe to be the importance of including Nakba Day as a day of significance once the TDSB arrives at that point in the process, and I would like to explain why. For context, Nakba means catastrophe, and it is a day marked by Palestinians to commemorate the destruction of Palestinian society that took place between 1947 and 1949, including the permanent displacement of a majority of the Palestinian people, a destruction and displacement that was directly caused through the establishment of the State of Israel. Shifting to a personal lens, it feels relevant to share that I had never heard of the Nakba until I was 20 years old, which was about 2 years ago. It's a joke. In fact, growing up Jewish here in Toronto, I knew nothing about the Palestinian community here or anywhere else. And as I've seen reports come out about anti-Semitism within the TDSB and the fear described by some Jewish students, I've done a lot of reflecting on how I would have felt in this moment if I were meeting it as my 15-year-old self. For context, that 15-year-old self had just gone on a trip called the March of the Living in Poland. I was with about 5,000 Jewish youth from around the world, and we spent most of the time visiting the death camps. I will never be able to shake the visceral feeling of being in places where such horrors took place. And then we traveled to Israel, and all I had ever been taught about Israel was that it meant safety for the Jewish people. And this trip, coming right from Poland, solidifying the safety, the sense of safety deep within the fear center of my brain, the amygdala. This is my inheritance of collective trauma. And while in this land, likely crossing over many of the hundreds of Palestinian villages that were destroyed between those years, still I learned nothing about the Palestinian people, their stories, their culture, their art, or their connection to the land. If I'm being truly frank, all I had learned up until that point, something solidified on this trip, was that the Palestinian cause against Israel was just based in the same hate as the Nazis and all those who have persecuted Jews over time. The result is that I know with these sets of experiences, if I was meeting the current moment as my 15-year-old self, I would undoubtedly experience heart-pounding fear in my body if I saw, for example, a fellow student wear a Free Palestine sweatshirt or a keffiyeh. And so I can empathize with the Jewish students who are reporting fear in this way. But my sense of what's happening today when a Jewish student experiences this fear is to label that fear as anti-Semitism and to silence the person expressing solidarity with Palestinians. And what I want to offer here this evening, through my experience as a mediator and my own learning journey on this, is that there is a better way. There is another way to approach these situations that can center the experiences of Jewish students and Palestinian students that would be consistent with a trauma-informed approach and one that would embrace the EDI-infused ethos of the TDSB. And this would be simply to start. If a Jewish student is experiencing that, the teachers could be taught to just slow down with them and seek understanding of this feeling of fear through empathy with questions like, Have the Hamas attacks from October 7th and the fallout been impacting you? To make space for that. To ask what specifically about the Free Palestine message makes you uncomfortable or upset? How does seeing someone express support for Palestine make you feel? On top of the empathy, could be inviting the essential skill of multiple perspectives. Do you understand what Free Palestine means to the person wearing the message? How can we find out? Do you believe, can we work with the idea of having different opinions and still respecting each other? On this foundation of empathy, on multiple perspectives, I think it's also essential for Jewish students to learn about the plurality of Palestinian experience, to hear their stories, and to come back to the theme, to understand the Palestinian experience of the Nakba and how it's continuing through the occupation and through this horrific moment as well. The Holocaust is taught in our system, so should the Nakba, and it being a day of significance would allow that. To conclude, I believe that it is acknowledgement of historical reality, even the darkest chapters of history, when they are rooted in empathy and mutual respect. This is the best antidote to fear, and that the TDSB can better support Jewish students, Palestinian students, in fact, all students, in learning together and crucially, in healing together. Thank you.
There are no questions at this time, but thank you for sharing your experience, your very personal experience as well. Oh, wait. Trustee Ehrhardt has a question.
Sorry, I can't keep notes fast enough. I was wondering if you could share your written delegation or what you're reading with us.
By email, you mean?
Yeah, just send it to the delegates email.
I'll have to scan it because it's kind of written.
That's just fine. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The TDSB Days of Significance cataloged a range of various days, weeks, and months, which held cultural and social justice significance to diverse communities. Integral to this calendar were creed, faith-based days to acknowledge and honor students and staff's creed and faith-based observances. This curated list served as a resource for schools, informing decisions and acknowledgements through various means such as announcements, displays, and school and board-wide activities such as track and field, concerts, school fairs, and graduations. The calendar plays an important role in school strategic planning by providing resources about significant creed and faith-based days. A team of staff will be presenting this evening with respect to this issue. I'm going to at this point in time, turn it over to Human Rights System Lead, Mehajbeen Ibrahim, who's going to speak to this particular aspect of it. Mehajbeen, next slide, please.
Good evening. I'm going to focus on the religious days of observance, or what we commonly call holy days. The right to hold and practice creed or religion is a fundamental human right that is protected both in the board's Human Rights Policy, P031, and in the Ontario Human Rights Code. Corollary to the equality right is the duty to accommodate the creed or religious observance or holy day of our students and staff in accordance with the board's own Human Rights Policy and Human Rights Case Law. The creed religion accommodation guidance is provided systemically on human rights matters TDSB wide. Therefore, it is important that we do have a list of holy days or holy day, faith day calendar. While it is not an exhaustive list, it certainly serves as an important reminder of the duty to accommodate creed-based observances or holy days and is helpful in planning purposes. We will continue that practice, and I would like to now invite Peter Chang to speak to the next slide. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to spend a few minutes speaking about Heritage Months, as it is. These are also considered significant observances and something that the trustees are quite familiar with. Currently, the TDSB recognizes 13 Heritage History Months. These selected Heritage History Months are recognized formally across the system during their designated month. Heritage History Month designations are brought forward by a trustee motion and voted on by the Board of Trustees for approval. Currently, as you're aware, there's a moratorium in place, also approved by the Board of Trustees, signifying that additional Heritage History Months may no longer be included until a policy is developed. On February the 5th, 2020, the Board of Trustees approved the updated policy development work plan for this policy development. The updated work plan identifies several key themes related to history and heritage months and how they're to be designated. Thank you. And I'll pass this now to Lorraine Linton to speak about non-creed based and non-heritage month days.
Next slide, please. And thank you, Peter. The non-creed based and non-heritage month days of significance calendar will be developed through a phased approach. This method ensures a systematic and transparent process for adding or removing relevant days. Phase 1 begins this September for the 2024-25 school year. And you can see the TDSB will share 3 of the Days of Significance calendars. They will include, firstly, the TDSB Heritage and History Months, 2, the Creed and Faith-Based Holy Day calendar, and the 3rd are the Indigenous Days of Significance. The committee will need to establish several processes, and this work will include establishing the staff committee structure, appointing staff committee members, defining roles and responsibilities of the staff committee members, establishing the frequency that this committee will meet, and establishing conditions and criteria for the inclusion or the exclusion of dates. Phase 2 will also take place during the same 2024-25 school year, and we anticipate this being active in the spring of 2025. And during this time, the committee will work on the following: developing the communication process for the TDSB and the development of the TDSB Days of Significance calendar pursuant to the development of the processes as noted in Phase 1. Can we go to the next slide, please? This slide speaks of Phase 3. This will take place during the 2025-2026 school year. And this will be the finalization of the TDSB Days of Significance calendar. This is when it will be circulated, providing schools with 4 distinct calendars of reference. The 3 that we mentioned before, the Heritage and History Months, Creed-based Holy Days, and Indigenous Days of Significance. And at this time, the TDSB Days of Significance calendar will also be available for schools to reference. So during this time, the committee processes will include a review of the identified process and the development of communication for the Toronto District School Board. This concludes our presentation this evening, and at this time, I'll pass it back to Associate Salmon, Associate Director.
Thank you, Lorraine. At the end of the day, part of what we want to do is establish a process in order so that we have a mechanism in place in order to move forward with respect to days of significance that also honors communities and honors the various days that are very important. But we as a board want to make sure that there's a process by which we are going through in order to identify days to recognize and days to potentially remove. Thank you. That's the end of our presentation. We welcome any questions.
Trustee Dawson, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the team for the presentation. I just have a quick question. So with Heritage Month, this appears to also be a review of Heritage Months. And so will we be recommending potentially changes to Heritage Months, whether it's adding new months, moving existing months, or eliminating some of the months? Is that up for discussion as well through this process?
Thank you, and through the chair, I'm going to ask System Superintendent Chang in order to respond to that, keeping in mind that there are 3 distinct types of calendars that we've identified for trustees. So, Mr. Chang, if you can respond.
Thank you so much. And through the chair, the purpose of sharing with the trustees the work development plan is that as staff, we're currently in phase 2 of the work development plan, which is to spend the time and think about how we can go about working on the policy in itself. So yes, trustees, there will be an opportunity to look at how we can go about adding new heritage months and making some revisions as they come along. But at this point in time, as Mr. Samuel was saying, the focus for tonight is to spend the time on the days of significance calendar. And certainly, trustees, we will have the chance to connect with you about how we're doing with the heritage months policy.
Okay. Thank you. And I would just ask that when we do get to the months policy, that the CACs are consulted, because I know that especially BSAC was very interested in heritage months. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll definitely take that back.
Okay, next up we have Trustee King.
Thank you, through you, Chair, and thank you to staff for the work on this and the report. Because we've heard a number of delegations, not only tonight, but over the last weeks and months, about a desire to see the recognition of Nakba Day, I'm wondering if staff can just be very clear for the public about where this would fit within the considerations in terms of the phase, the section, and the timing of when it would be considered or could be considered.
Thank you. And through the chair, staff has definitely heard a great deal over the course of the last 6 months, in particular with respect to Nakba Day. Part of what would be the process that we would be undertaking is as we move forward and the creation of the first part is we needed to create a process, and a process would involve us being able to take those particular requests that have come forward from community, from staff, from other individuals, based on conversations we've also engaged with, in order to then take it to the actual committee, and the committee would go through a review process. So the first part is establishment of the actual committee, and then we would look at what are the actual specific requests that have come forward that may warrant us making additions and changes to the days of significance. As far as timing goes, what we have outlined is the committee should be formed over the next in the next school year, over the next 3 to 4 months, so sometime around December, and we should be able to provide to board and broader community by the end of February an idea of what the actual next year's days of significance will look like. We want to make sure that our communities have the opportunity to, in order to do some forward planning around what the next school year will bring. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee King. Up next, we have Trustee Pay. Please go ahead. Oh, my apologies. Sorry, Trustee Pay. Before you is Trustee Ehrhardt, followed by Trustee Pay.
Thanks very much. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. I apologize. I'm looking at one screen and speaking into another just because I'm having connectivity issues today. So if there are challenges, please let me know. Thanks very much for this presentation and for the other trustees' questions. I wanted to ask about creed religious observances. And I think it's my understanding that the current days of significance calendar lists the creed-based observances within it, and that in this proposal, creed-based observances would be in a separate list. So it may not be that there are school-based educational components for every creed-based observance, but that they would be respected for student attendance purposes, for worker attendance purposes. Do I have that understanding correct? And could that be clarified? And thanks very much.
Yes, so thank you, and through the chair, yes, creed-based dates would still be part of a separate calendar. We're simply dividing the calendars out, but we would continue to provide creed-based recognition. I'm not sure if Benjamin has any comments.
Thank you, and through the chair. So we will continue to provide a list of creed-based holidays, system-wide use that will go to schools and other places to help with their planning and with meeting our obligations under the human rights policy to accommodate creed religious-based needs. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for the clarification.
Thank you very much. You're up next, Trustee Pei. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to relay the message that I got from one of my constituents who asking to add a British Heritage Month to our Heritage Month calendars. So I just wanted to, through you, ask the staff, what's the staff take on this?
Thank you, and through the chair, the staff's take would be that we want to be able to follow a process, and that process would be informing staff with respect to the requests, and all requests of that nature would be looked at by this particular committee as we move forward towards identifying which days of significance will be represented for the 25-26 school year. Thank you.
So, sorry. So, Madam Chair, I didn't get the answer. I'm not sure the answer is really clear to me. So, is this a staff saying that the staff will consider the possibility to have a British Heritage Month, or just say there's going to be continued conversation? But I just wonder what kind of conversation is going to be taking place. Who is going to be part of that conversation? Are those committee members going to be part of the conversation? Or just staffs?
Thank you, and through the chair, part of what we would do with any particular request, staff would consider it as part of our process. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, was there be like a public consultation regarding this?
Through the chair, no, it is not a question of public consultation. What we've outlined is that staff and committee members have the opportunity in order to provide suggestions to this particular committee, and then the committee will consider those that come forward. Thank you.
Madam Chair, is that possible that the committee can provide the committee's email address so I can forward this constituent to her, and maybe she can engage in some conversation with the committee?
Thank you, and through the chair, I'm happy to follow up with the trustee afterwards if you would like me to provide an ability in order to provide that information to staff. I'm happy to follow up with you afterwards in order to get that information and provide you with that email. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Associate Director Alexis. Thank you, Madam Chair. I finished my question.
Thank you, Trustee Pei. Trustee McLean, you're next.
Thank you, and through the chair. Can I have staff just give just a very brief, what it means to have these days from a school point of view, on whether this is like an opportunity, a learning opportunity in all our schools, or just schools that would have people with, a particular cultural or religious affiliation that they're aware of? Would we encourage a day not to, that we wouldn't have tests on because there might be an expectation that some members of the class wouldn't be in attendance, and that, so I'm just I'm trying to get a sense of, other than our newsletters recognizing all these things, what this actually means in our buildings, particularly our elementary buildings, around a learning opportunity and an opportunity to share, and an opportunity for marginalized communities to share what, their proud heritages and that kind of, thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'm going to ask Century Assigned Principal Carlo Cabrera to respond to that.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Part of the purpose of the Days of Significance calendar, whether it be the Heritage Month, whether it be the Creed faith-based, or whether it be the Indigenous Days of Significance, is to provide schools with an opportunity to for curricular learning. In some instances, announcements are derived from particular days. In some instances, displays are made within the schools by students with regard to any particular day on the Days of Significance. Thank you.
If I may add, thank you very much to staff. The Heritage Days, the Creed-based days as well, Heritage Month, Creed-based days and Days of Significance are numerous. Schools often make selections based on the communities that they serve with respect to embedding it in the curriculum, as well as engaging communities and students in highlighting their experiences connected to Heritage Months and or Days of Significance or Creed-based days. One of the things that this amazing team has grappled with over the past year and longer is exactly what purpose the Days of Significance serve when they are many, and we know that schools cannot recognize each of them in similar ways. And so I think that that's been part of the complexity of determining which days of significance to put on the TDSB calendar, and then to be very clear about what our expectations are about how these days will be used in schools. We know the importance that all three of these calendars have on ensuring student and staff belonging and respecting their identities, but it is a complexity that staff are grappling with as we work through Heritage Months and Days of Significance.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any further questions on this item. So if you give us one, I need a mover and a seconder for this report. Thank you, Trustee Williams and Trustee McLean. We're just going to get that vote opened.
Ms. Kandaraja in favor.
Tran in favor. Trustee Nunziata in favor.
Dawson in favor.
Chernis Lynn in favor.
Hassan in favor.
Pay in favor.
Patel in favor.
Trustee DeVitis. Trustee Hess. Trustee Gose. And Trustee Ehrhardt. How do you vote?
Trustee Ehrhardt in favor.
Trustee Gose in favor.
Trustee DeVitis, are you there? Okay, we'll mark him as absent.
Sorry, I was here in favor.
Okay, just under the wire. We'll let it go. Okay, and that has carried.